Welcome, and thank you for joining me on the Path of the Seeker. Today I'm sharing a meditation on the full moon in Cancer. Full moons are the receptive part of the moon cycle. This is the time for meditation. Meditation simply means placing the mind upon, so on the full moon, I share my thoughts after reflecting on the symbols of the moon cycle. This one is a little different because a few days ago, on the winter solstice, we had the powerful Jupiter and Saturn conjunction in Aquarius that a lot of people call the Christmas star. I will share a bit of information on that because the energy has been activated. I want to start off with the stone that I pulled for this full moon. I pulled Labradorite. The catchphrase that Margaret Ann Limbaugh associates with this stone in her book is wide-angle lens. Labradorite is the stone of the big picture. This is one of my favorite stones to meditate with because of its labradorescence. Each piece is so gorgeous and unique. This is the perfect stone for this meditation as well because we are going to zoom out from looking at just this moon cycle to examining the 20-year cycle of the Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions, along with the 60-year cycle of the triplicities that they conjunct within, and the start of the age of Aquarius. This moon cycle has held and activated big energies. To start off with, this full moon is at 8 degrees of Cancer. The sun, meanwhile, is at 8 degrees of Capricorn. Mercury and Pluto are in Capricorn, mopping up the mess that Jupiter and Saturn left behind. Keep in mind that Pluto won't be leaving Capricorn until 2023, so an echo of that energy that was initiated there is going to remain in place until that time. We kicked off this cycle with a new moon in Sagittarius, where we released the former focus on a global community. During this full moon, we're focused on our home and family priorities, and where they fit into this new paradigm. The astrology of this moon cycle is perfectly represented by the Temperance card. We're trying to find the right mix between the global and domestic perspective. If we focus too much on one or the other, an imbalance is created. Now, the deeper meaning of the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction is fascinating. There is no wonder why it's even captured the media's attention and inspired people across the globe. There is a lot of hype around the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction that happened. Completely by chance, before I even knew about the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction this year, I happened to pick up a book that had an entire chapter dedicated to the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction cycle. In the book, Kabbalistic Astrology, Rabbi Joel C. Dobin explains that in the Jewish tradition, the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter symbolizes the Creator's will. Saturn was the farthest known planet, and since the Creator exists outside of creation, it was believed the slow-moving Saturn conveyed the will of the Creator to Jupiter, which will convey those new instructions when it meets up with the inner planets over the next year. Let's look at those dates. Most of the Jupiter conjunctions will occur within the first 2 months of 2021. Mercury will conjunct Jupiter on January 11th, and then the Sun will conjunct Jupiter on January 29th. Venus will conjunct Jupiter on February 11th. The only planet that will not conjunct Jupiter in 2021 is Mars. Mars won't receive the new instructions until May 29th, 2022. So mark your calendars or put these dates in your journal and we will see if anything significant happens on those dates. Another aspect of this Jupiter and Saturn conjunction that I want to point out is that it begins a new elemental cycle. Jupiter and Saturn tend to conjunct each other 3 times in the same element. The Jupiter and Saturn conjunction that we witnessed is the final time that we will see Saturn and Jupiter meet in an air sign during our lifetime. This air elemental cycle started in 1981 with a conjunction in Libra. Then in 2001, there was a conjunction in Gemini. The element of air is the intellect, communication, and the stage of conceiving an idea. There is no wonder that we have seen so much technological progress with phones and the internet emerging during this cycle. However, the writing is on the wall when it comes to the innovation of these technologies, as the updates slowed down, and for the most part, they've reached their full potential. It is also interesting that in the last leg of this cycle, we are starting to see a huge increase in censorship, along with tracking technology. Aquarius is the sign of integration, and it seems that we are going to integrate the lessons that we have learned, starting with that balanced Libra energy of 1981, and the overabundance of information that the internet brought in the Gemini cycle that started in 2001. The next elemental cycle for Jupiter and Saturn will start in 2041 in the sign of Cancer. The last time Jupiter and Saturn conjuncted in water signs was 1821 to 1901, and as Dobin points out in Kabbalistic astrology, that's when trade routes were extended to cross the ocean and wars were fought overseas. Finally, some are saying that this conjunction is the start of the age of Aquarius. I don't really see how that matters, but I suppose if it's giving people hope or making them excited during this dark period, that's a good thing. At least, no one's saying it's the end of the world, so we seem to have gotten over that one, so hooray! A lot of people seem to think that the coronavirus pandemic is going to spark a new revolution in humanity. I'm just praying it's not the start of a new dark age. What is interesting is that Rabbi Dobin did connect the start of the age of Aquarius with the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction. Interestingly, Rabbi Dobin did connect the start of the age of Aquarius with the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction, but he says the new age officially started on New Year's Day in 1981. Here's a quote. Every 2,160 years, there is one extra Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that heralds the beginning of every new age. That conjunction, a magnificent conjunction, occurred on February 19th, 1961, at 28 degrees of Capricorn. The conjunction in 1981 on New Year's Day, almost at midnight, was a great conjunction in Libra, marking both a change in triplicities and the arrival of the age of Aquarius. Page 27, Kabbalistic Astrology. Now, there is a lot of debate regarding when the age of Aquarius starts. There is an overlap period, most people agree. And I tend to favor Kabbalistic astrology's dates because there's actual connection to an astrological cycle of 2,160 years that mark the beginning of the new age. If we use Rabbi Dobin's dates, that means the baby boomers, so often accused of destroying everything, were the last generation of the age of Pisces. This absolutely makes sense. Maybe they fulfilled the role that they were meant to close out that old energy that was so fixated on control and empires. That also means that Generation X is the first generation of the age of Aquarius. So it's not that we are starting the age of Aquarius, but that we are experiencing the final act in the first chapter of the age. Remember, the next chapter won't begin until 2041. Perhaps this final act will define this new age, but it's not the start of the new age. Honestly, with the fact that many people agree that there is an overlap period, there is no reason not to believe that we are currently in the age of Aquarius. The buffalo medicine card calls upon us to view this time as sacred. The buffalo is one of the most sacred animals because every part of the buffalo was useful to the tribe. When a buffalo was brought home by the hunters, it was a time of abundance and productivity. The silent snow moon also indicates that this is a sacred time of reflection. We need to take in the newness of the situation. The events of this year have forever altered the landscape and perception of life. The fact that we went through a global catastrophe, even if it seems blown out of proportion and illogical to some of us, the pandemic has changed the world because all of us face the same crisis together. Unfortunately, instead of bringing people together, it seems to have driven people further apart, even as this cycle highlighted how precious and fragile life and personal liberty are. As these new energetic cycles start, a new year according to the Gregorian calendar, a new moon cycle, and a new Jupiter-Saturn conjunction cycle, we should take time for a sacred pause. We should look back across the previous cycle at what has worked while contemplating the next cycle that lies before us. For example, I am eternally grateful to be here while so many people awaken to their true spiritual nature. In 2007, when I first came across the idea of the Great Awakening, I never imagined it would become a part of popular culture, even if it ended up a little bit warped in the process. The fact that such rich, esoteric spiritual material is easily accessible to all, and that people are interested, marks an incredibly powerful moment in human history. Finally, there is the Hebrew letter Samek, that resembles the Ouroboros. The Ouroboros is a serpent swallowing its own tail, and it is interesting that this moon cycle started with a solar eclipse conjunct the South Node. The South Node is known as the serpent's tail, and with the sun there, it did remind me of a serpent swallowing its own tail. The Ouroboros represents cycles, and so it is fitting that Samek is the Hebrew letter associated with this time. Remember that Samek symbolizes divine support and protection. Nothing happens outside of divine timing. Although not every aspect of creation may know the purpose of what is happening, everything is within the interconnected divine plan. We can never truly be off course. We can make mistakes and miss the mark, but all possible outcomes are already known to the Creator. I know people are calling this the Great Reset. As our study of Samek and the Ouroboros suggest, the path is a spiral. Yet I don't agree with the term reset. Perhaps we're going through a great reboot. These days, unless you have a catastrophic system failure, data is usually backed up, so whatever progress you made in a game or project is rarely lost. Maybe we repeat the same level, but we're not starting the game over. The word reset seems to suggest that we will repeat the same old programs that we've already experienced. A reboot is simply powering down and restarting the hardware so that whatever glitch caused by the hardware comes to an end. A reboot also happens in technology after an update. That's why I see this as more of a great reboot than a reset. It is interesting to see this being suggested in popular culture since I had an entire series of dreams about resetting reality at the start of the year before the pandemic. The reason I bring this up is because every year I look at the movies that are coming out and see if there is a theme. 2019 was defined by a feminine phoenix theme in the movie Avengers Endgame. At the start of the year, I said that 2020 was going to be the year of tying up loose threads, as the movie seemed to be looking backwards. However, the pandemic completely interrupted that cycle. That's why I'm not opposed to the idea of the Great Reboot. The story that the collective unconscious is experiencing was dramatically interrupted. Instead of looking to the past and tying up loose threads, 2020 ended up being the year of the Stoic soldier. I will go into that and the fact that the theme of 2021 is the year of the villain in my next video. So stay tuned for that one. Well, this has been a lot of information, so though this video is coming to an end, I'm wishing all of you a wonderful full moon and a happy new year.